America loves a good story, but sometimes the story we tell the loudest are oftentimes the most harmful. Today, I want to share with you one of the most harmful political myths of the past 50 years, the welfare queen. Now, this myth didn't just appear. She was crafted, curated, marketed even. And one of the people that pushed that narrative the most was this guy.
In Chicago, they found a woman who holds the record. She used 80 names, 30 addresses, 15 telephone numbers to collect food stamps, Social Security, veterans benefits for 4 non-existent deceased veterans' husbands, as well as welfare. Her tax-free cash income alone has been running $150,000 a year.
That was Republican nominee for President Ronald Reagan in 1976, referencing Linda Taylor. To be fair, Taylor did serve prison time for welfare fraud. However, the figure, that $150,000, was wildly exaggerated because court documents suggested that was closer to $40,000. But also, to be fair to Reagan, he didn't invent that term welfare queen. He didn't even mention it in that speech. That actually came from the Chicago Tribune. Both Reagan and those newspapers turned black women into the face of welfare fraud in America. And that would be a narrative and a caricature that would follow black women for years to come. He told that story repeatedly. And even though Linda Taylor was only one case, both unusual and extreme, Reagan held her up as the face of welfare. And America believed him. And unfortunately, that myth didn't die in the 1970s. We saw it in the most recent government shutdown as it relates to SNAP benefits. And as of course, people online dusted off those same talking points. Pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Stop taking handouts. Welfare queens are ruining the system. But if we just pause and just stop for a minute and really look at those stereotypes, the actual numbers tell a different story. For one, SNAP fraud is extremely rare, less than 2%. The second is that the majority of SNAP beneficiaries are white. And lastly, most of those SNAP families are working families. Many different industries across the board. So this stereotype wasn't built on truth on a grand scale. It was built on a singular occurrence, blown way out of proportion to conjure fear and misinformation for political expediency. And that reminds me of a conversation I had a few years ago. See, on social media, Candace Owens, the famous political commentator, posted a story about her grandfather pulling himself up by his bootstraps, that he was a self-made man who never needed government assistance. Now, I am no Candace Owens fan, but I was inspired by this story. True, not true, I'll leave that up to you. But where she lost me is when she said that if people just tried hard enough, that they wouldn't need assistance. But what bothered me even more, just like anything on social media, is the comment section, repeating those same old Reagan era myths. And as I was reading those comments and thinking about my own life story, I kept thinking about this lady. Because see, the thing is, I don't look back at my childhood with some retroactive lens of struggle. Because as a kid, I didn't feel poor or that we were on assistance. I was just living life. I felt like I had a mom who was just simply doing what she had to do to survive. Working, going to school, raising 2 kids, and figuring out everyday life. Now, as an adult with my own family, I'm starting to understand the weight that she carried, how much she handled in real time, quietly, while politicians spoke at podiums. And while the country turned poverty into a soundbite, my mom was living the truth behind the headlines. She didn't theorize poverty, she survived it. But back in the day, it didn't go by SNAP. It went by a different name.
Back then, I want to say maybe 1980s, late 1980s. I think it was called AFDC or either DHS is the services we had to go to. Food stamps wasn't much, but you got a check and food stamps. Check would be like $135 a month, and food stamps would probably be about $300. And that would have to hold you for the whole month. And back then, prices was a little bit different, but it was just something to help you through the process.
Now, in addition to being on government assistance, we stayed in the Lamar Terrace housing projects in Memphis, Tennessee. It was built in 1939 by the newly created Memphis Housing Authority. But by the time we moved there in the late 80s, it was largely in disrepair and somewhat abandoned. And to be honest, it wasn't always the safest place to live. But it was home. And Mom shared why she moved us there.
Living in Lamar Terrace, it really wasn't bad at all because of the fact that living in government housing, getting the food stamps, getting the check, and then the thing is you over there close to an elementary school. Like I said, it was just a stepping stone because of the fact that I was there with my children because of the fact that I wanted to go to school. And that was a great place for me to be. And I don't regret it at all because once I finished college and everything, we moved out of Lamar Terrace straight into the house.
The house she is referring to is the one she's standing in front of. Yeah, I was sad to leave my friends behind, but I was also excited. Look at this place. I was going to have my own room, big backyard, a whole new pace on life. But talking to her now, I start thinking about the people we left behind, families just like ours, doing the best they can with what they had. Because remember the stereotypes. For people like us who stayed in Lamar Terrace housing projects, people weren't working. They weren't sending their kids to school. And they were primarily scamming the system. So I asked my mom what she saw.
It's amazing some of the people that lived in Lamar Terrace as far as where they are now. Some of them are doctors, lawyers, police officers that grew up in the Lamar Terrace. These kids that lived in Lamar Terrace, the parents that was on the assistant, they made sure these kids got something to eat. They made sure these kids went to school. They made sure these kids made the grades. And they was very active in school. But all of us needed to help at that present time, to survive. It was kind of hard to try to even scam the system at that time because they monitored everything you did. You had to report everything. When I graduated from college, I ended up getting a really nice job, and I reported it myself to let them know, hey, okay, I don't need this. I don't need the services anymore. I found a house. I'm getting ready to go. So, they cut everything off.
One thing you need to know about my mom is that she's a prideful person, but she doesn't regret taking the assistance and living there.
I do not regret being on food stamps and getting a government check. I don't regret it or living in the project because, like I said, it was just a stepping stone for me. That's all it was. I needed the help, and I got the help. I received the help, and going to college, and then also raising 2 kids, and now both of my kids are doing well, amazingly well. One here in South Haven and one in Houston. Both doing amazing. And I got a beautiful, wonderful, amazing daughter-in-law right along with it too. And grandkids.
We are most certainly blessed. Look at us. Myself, Army veteran, a family of my own with my wife, father of 3 kids, award-winning podcaster. Not too shabby. And then there's my sister, master's degree, really good high-paying job. She just bought a car that looks and acts like a spaceship. And she just closed on her first home. Not too bad for a black woman raising 2 kids in the projects. It's just crazy to me, which leads me to why I wanted to do this piece. For every exaggerated welfare queen story that's out there, there's probably 10 to 20 stories that are more like my mom's, meaning she's the rule, not the exception. My mom, along with countless other black women, didn't cheat the system. They used it exactly for the way it was designed. And when they needed help, it kept them alive. I mean, even in our own experience, when we didn't need it, Mom got us off of it proudly. Because this isn't a story about dependency. It's a story about dignity. It's a story about resilience. It's a story about truth. And it's also a story America needs to hear.